Welcome to English Literature class. Today I'm going to deal with the chapter 1, The Best Christmas Present in the World, written by Michael Morpurgo. For class 8 from the textbook Honeydew. Michael Morpurgo was born on 5th October 1943, aging 76 years. He is an English author, poet, playwright, and moron, who is also known best for children's novels such as War House. His work is noted for its magical storytelling, and he was the member of British Empire. War brings death and sadness. There are much better ways of resolving differences, and this story had focused how they have resolved differences with making peace in the middle of the war. In this story, the author finds a letter written many decades earlier by a soldier who mentions how easily enemies can become friends. The author goes in search of the letter's rightful owner, the late soldier's old wife, and gives her the best Christmas present in the world. Let's now move on to a few introductory questions for the lesson. First question. War causes destruction and brings suffering. Do you agree? Second question. Is there a need for the humans to make war for their living? Third question. Can humans resolve any situation without causing war? Fourth question. Few lines about soldier's life. Let's know the characters in the story and meaning for new words. Jim Macpherson. He was a British captain. He was a teacher before enrolling himself into the British Army. Connie Macpherson, wife of Jim Macpherson. Hans Ulf. He was a German captain. He was a cello player before enrolling into the German army. Fritz. A common name used to refer German soldiers in grey uniform. Tommy. A common name used to refer British soldiers in khaki uniform. No man's land. Unoccupied area between the front lines of opposing army. And finally, Michael Morpurgo, the author. Let's now move on to the summary. The story took place in Dorset. It's a town in England. Many years ago, the author went to a junk shop in Bridport. He noticed a roll-top desk. It was very old and made of oak. It was in a very bad condition. It even had burn marks down one side. Since it was cheap, the author decided to buy it and repair it later. On the Christmas Eve, he began to work on it. He removed the roll top, and after a struggle, hardly he pulled out the drawer which was jammed. The fire and water had damaged it very badly. He found a secret drawer underneath. He took out a small black tin box from it. There was a note sellotaped on it that said, Jim's last letter received January 25, 1915. To be buried with me when I die. Knowing it was wrong, out of curiosity, he opened the box. Inside it, he found an envelope with the address Mrs. Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beach, Bridport, Dorset. The letter was dated December 26, 1940. The letter has been written by Jim to his dearest wife, Connie, in which he shares the incident of the happiest Christmas morning he ever had. He was a soldier set against Germans during the beginning of the First World War. Jim wrote to her that he was very happy because something wonderful had happened. The soldiers on both sides of no man's land were taking up position in their trenches. It was a cold and frosty Christmas morning as expected. Jim saw a German soldier waving a white flag. They were calling out the English soldier to say Happy Christmas. It was a big surprise to be greeted like friends by the enemies, but it was true, not a trick. The English soldiers also wished them in return. The leader said that they wanted to celebrate the festival. As Jim was the officer in command, he allowed all his men to join the German soldiers. He saw a wonderful sight of the grey coat and khaki coat mingled in the middle of no man's land. In the time of war, they were making peace. The officer command of German soldier named Hans Ulf first came and shook his hands with Jim, who was the officer command of British soldier. Hans Ulf said before joining the army he used to play the cello in an orchestra. Jim, in reply, said he had been a school teacher in Dorset. Hans said that he knew Dorset well. In fact, he had read about that place in Hardy's novel. The soldiers from the rival camp laughed, smoked, played football, drank, and feasted together with whatever they had. They enjoyed the day to the fullest. As they were sharing their feast, Hans said to Jim that he liked the marzipan, the sweet covering on Jim's bread, and he never had such tasty one. Jim wrote in the letter that he had never seen or imagined a Christmas party like that. Both of them agreed on one point. The countries should have better resolved their disputes by playing a football or cricket match, because no one dies in a match, whereas war leaves behind orphans and widows to the land where we live. On the Christmas day, the author somehow reaches the owner of this letter. He wished her Happy Christmas and gave the letter to her. She recognized the writing of her husband and felt very happy. She mistook the author for Jim, who had come home as promised on Christmas long years before. She kissed the author on the cheek and sat near him and asked him to read the letter to her, as she wanted to listen to the voice of her husband. She gave him tea and a nice Christmas cake, marzipan, which he likes. She said that Jim himself was the best Christmas present to her. I would like to conclude with these words. War brings death and sadness. There are much better ways of resolving differences.